Hi, my name is Ngina Mwaluko, one half of the Disruptors, and today we're here with Youth Plus Radio for Connect One on One, and I'm joined with a wonderful guest, Andrew Muriuki.
Hi, how y'all doing? Happy to be here. Excited for the conversation.
Tell us about yourself.
My name is Andrew Muriuki. I actually haven't been home for the last 23 years, so I'm excited to be back. I've been living in Atlanta, Georgia for the last decade, part of that 2 decades, but part of that also been in Tennessee, up in the mountains, and of course, I was working in hospitality. And for the last decade, that's been kind of my passion. The last 5 years, I really got into what I'm doing now and what we're here to talk about, which is gaming and esports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about the gaming. What is it that you do? What's your company name?
Okay. Yeah. So my company name is BARBAH Games. So it's BARBAH. It's actually an acronym for Bringing Atlanta's Resources to Boost African Hubs. And what we are, we're an ed tech platform. So we go into schools to activate about esports and esports education. It's a pivotal time at the moment because having lived in Atlanta, what people don't know is that education, especially for us, what is CBC, and for other countries, what they call CBE, competency-based education, is a UNESCO initiative, right? So a lot of countries are struggling with the CBC or CBE, but living in Atlanta, I got to see how gaming gaming in clubs not only helps gamification of education, but also inspires kids and meets them where they're at. So that's what we're here to do as BARBAH Games, start esports clubs in schools, and it's an Olympic sport at the moment. So we're not just runners. We might as well be pumping out the next esports Olympians and athletes.
Okay. So now you're back in the country, and you're trying to get into the schools and education.
Yep.
But one thing we know in Kenya is that there's an issue with resources, right? Especially with CBC, and it being a very new initiative that you're trying to do. How have you been able to mitigate that?
Yeah. So being on the ground has been pretty interesting. This year, I actually made a slight pivot to the company because initially it was all about just the digital aspect of gaming. But this year we have what they call the Games of the Future in November. And the Games of the Future is an understanding that the IOC, International Olympic Commission, realized that to be able to bring everyone into this esports space, there has to be a synergy of the physical games and the digital games. So the Games of the Future is called phygital games. So they take the physical and the digital. An example, Kenya just had the first phygital games over in Embakasi when I landed. That was around the 18th. And they had some soccer players, football players, and FIFA 24 players. So you take half the score from the actual soccer players and half the score of the FIFA 24 players, and that becomes a hybrid team. So back to your question, how do we bridge that divide? Of course, there's the schools that have all the resources like the ISKs, and then there's a school like the one we work with in Kibera called Stara. A lot of those kids are great soccer players, volleyball players. So with that, we want to align their physical game, but surprisingly enough, they also play games in this gaming hubs, but bringing them together with other digital players to create this synergy of a hybrid team is how I'm adapting the company to align to this under-resourced schools.
Okay, that's interesting. So going back to what BARBAH is, even before you started out, right? You had this idea. What shaped your mission and your direction?
Wow. I think it stems back from my experience in hospitality. So I happen to work for some really great, inspiring individuals. The first restaurant I worked for, hospitality company I worked for, was for Horst Schultz. He started Ritz-Carlton. And then he also had Capella. So working with him, I got to really have the passion for people, right? And then from there, the last stint I had was the company called Ted's Montana Grill, and it was owned by Ted Turner. Ted Turner is the largest landowner, and he also is the one who tried to give the UN $1 billion donation, which they couldn't take. So he started the UN Foundation. So working for him, Ted Turner Grill is Montana Grill is all about sustainability. So I think that also got ingrained in me at the core. But the bigger vision was some people might not know that in the 80s, the Olympics was almost canceled, right? And Ted Turner at that point had just started CNN, and he was like, wow, these guys are going to stop country relationships. And he started something called the Goodwill Games. So it was an initiative where a private individual brought the largest group of athletes together and nations together for goodwill, for people to communicate. Because at that point, USSR and America were not speaking to each other. So from that nexus of sustainability, the Goodwill Games, and my vision of what I'm trying to do, we started something that we'll talk later called the SDG Games. And that's where my passion came from, because the Sustainable Development Goals are this targets that every country is supposed to meet by 2030. The UN Foundation and Ted Turner is very passionate about this. So I saw an opportunity to connecting the largest continent and youngest continent to this largest, fastest moving industry called esports, and aligning them to this conversation that the SDGs that at the end of the day, we all benefit from as a continent. That's where the crux of my passion came from.
So, from what you're saying, gaming is just not entertainment.
Yep.
But at the same time, we are in a country that has had, especially parents, have this stereotype around gaming where their kids are wasting time,
Yep.
whatever the stereotype is. How are you able, what do you do to try and convince them about what you're doing and that it's for the good? It's for the good of the community. It's good for their kids. Yes.
Yeah. People don't realize that everything we do at the moment is around gaming and gamification. Let's take your car, your 2024 Mercedes Benz. It was the experience you have in the car is created in an operating system called Unreal Engine, right? Buildings, everything that's built today is built on a digital platform, right? Is now also gamified. Unreal Engine does the same. When you look at companies like in the States that are looking for how this city will develop, they use Unreal Engine to show the now and the tomorrow. Doctors who are practicing surgery, practicing a digital platform is done on Unreal Engine, right? So I want to show parents that gaming is not just about gaming. And here's another fact that people don't realize. Georgia Tech is a school in the US that have made the correlation that Gen Z right now and some millennials have faster synaptic connections from gaming. Their hand-eye coordination is way superior than other generations, right? So much so that the United States Space Force, the largest military branch of the US, has made it a mandate that 90% of all their hires will be gamers, because they see the importance of their fast thinking, quick on their feet, strategic awareness. There's a lot of opportunities there. So gaming needs to be demystified, that it's not just gaming. There's lots of job opportunities. Even when we look at esports, you need managers, you need doctors, you need architects, because all this needs to happen to be able to execute a good tournament. Mm-hmm. UAE is building 2 whole cities, the equivalent of Nairobi, that's just hospitality and gaming. If they see an importance to put over 400 billion to create cities, why are we not focused on that?
Interesting. So at the end of the day, you are an entrepreneur.
Correct.
Yes, with BARBAH Games. And we now know that the entrepreneurial life is a journey. It's a marathon. Mm-hmm. Never really ends. And if we were to use a gaming analogy, sometimes you get those challenges. It's like a game glitch. If you could hit the reset button on one challenge you've faced with BARBAH Games, what will it be and why?
I think it would be the reset on the education system in Kenya to be able to give students opportunities in the digital space. Because, when I started this company, one of the things that got me excited was that our logo is an astronaut, right? And I picked that because space is the highest frontier for humanity. Kenya in the 50s, actually East Africa then, in the 50s going into the 70s, we were in space already, right? We shot out the Uhuru satellite. The Uhuru satellite gives credit to all technology that we know today. The Uhuru satellite discovered the Big Bang. It discovered spectrum technology. It discovered lots of other technological things that we do not give ourselves credit for, right? So if we kept on the same trajectory from then to now, where would be an amazing space such that when I'm coming onto the ground introducing this thing, we already have the resources to get our youth kind of a head start. So I think that's how I'd answer that.
Okay. So clearly, your company is not only about profits, there's a lot of sustainability going on, and you've actually done a lot of work when it comes to local communities.
Yeah.
Can you share a story?
Yeah, so I started this journey really hard in 2024, and working with my first partner, Malcolm. He has a company called Technorganic, and we have a game we play on Fortnite every Saturday. So that was 11 to 2 Atlanta Eastern Standard Time, and then EAT would be like 5:30 to 9. So one of the things that have been very inspirational is we would pay for kids to play at some of these hubs. But during the week, because we only played on Saturday, during the week, some of those kids made friends or relationships with the kids in Atlanta. So one of the things that I saw that has been really inspiring, and that's why I'm really passionate about this SDG games, was kids in the US would be sending kids in Kenya money so they can play during the week, not just on Saturday, you know? And they're building this emotional relationship with strangers who they meet in a virtual game, and then now nurturing this amazing friendships that I'm just seeing happening organically. So I think that's been the one of the things that kind of sparked my, soul to show that the humanity is there. And that's one of the stories I talk about, that, having kids connect with other kids. And even now, because there's a diaspora that wants to connect back with their roots, they find it that they want to find more people to game. So I firmly believe that gaming will be that glue that unites humanity.
You've That's even perfect to the next question. You've talked about these US kids having this emotional relationship with Kenyan kids, right? And it brings in the issue of partnerships.
Yeah.
And for you, it seems like there's a lot you do with partnerships
Yeah.
to be able to give back to community.
Yeah.
And partnerships often drive innovation.
Yeah.
And BARBAH Games is the true, like it's a perfect example of innovation, right? How have collaborations worked out for you? How have they contributed to your mission?
I would say partnerships is everything. Starting off with Malcolm. Malcolm, like I said, his company is called Technorganic. It helps demystify gaming for kids. And sure, like in Fortnite, when you jump from here to there or you shoot something from here to there, there's mathematics in that. So showing the STEM in gaming. And then from there, we had the partnership with Captain Planet Foundation. Captain Planet Foundation is all about climate activism and connecting people to what needs to happen for change. And around the SDGs, that's our partner who helps us with that conversation piece. And then we have NASEF. NASEF, NASEF, stands for Network of Academic Scholastic Esports Federations. And their mandate is to have gaming in every middle school, high school, and university. And they're the official pathway for any gamer looking to go to the Olympics, right? So with them, that opens up a lot of doors. That's Atlanta. That's now Kenya. We have Wes Interactive. Wes Interactive is a game that was created by two Kenyans who wanted to make dancing fun, And I found them from another partner that we have called Nairobi Game Development Center. And they're all about game development. The things that they create is amazing. And the fact that people don't know about it is something I want to bring awareness to. I think we're having a conversation earlier that in 2022, there was a young man called Evans Carago who had the most downloaded game in the world called Mr. President. So we have a lot of people doing some amazing things on the ground, and our partnerships just keep growing. So those are just a couple I want to mention. We are having some other amazing partnerships, relate conversations happening down the road. I've just been here for 30 days, so I'm excited for what happens in the next year.
One of your most fascinating projects is the Digital Twin Initiative
Yeah.
with Mapshot,
Yeah.
mapping areas like Kibera. What was the vision behind this?
So that's our North Star vision. If for those who play Fortnite, you'll see that Fortnite has morphed to where it's very hyper realistic. One of the visions with working with Mapshot, they build large scale maps for the Olympics, Red Bull, and so on and so forth. But what I really wanted to do, it tied back to my initial dream of a company that I'd started. And we want to gamify the experience of living in Kibera. But at the same time, when you win in game, the person who is within a certain map area of the game also benefits in real life. So the vision with Mapshot and the digital twinning of Kibera is on how we can show what it looks like living there and what it would look like with transformation. COVID showed me that hospitals could be built for 1 million people in 90 days. Kibera's population is right about 2.1 million people. I think in 5 years, or even less, we should be able to rebuild that space. So I think using gaming and gamification and community, it's very doable. So that's my big passionate vision.
So what you're saying is that people need to see how it looks like now,
Yeah.
and then what it would look like if there was transformation.
Correct.
Apart from that, how do you see these virtual worlds creating real world change?
I think people don't realize what it feels like living in those spaces, right? So humanizing people's day-to-day lives and humanizing it on a scale that on one side we're contrasting this billion-dollar industry, and at the same time we're bringing in community to experience, but at the same time game to have an outcome for resource development. I think, or I want to believe that that's how we'll bring community together. You know, Kibera has the largest per capita of NGOs, but much hasn't changed, you know? And I've seen how community can happen. Like I said, with the kids in Atlanta, playing with kids in Kenya. Now imagine if we blow that up to a global scale, what we could do with that, you know? We have this target that's 2030 of the SDGs that, let's be honest, are just going to put the bucket down the road. And just last year at the Summit of the Future, corporations committed $12 trillion annually to make this change. If you go to the Global Compact website, it'll show every company that has said, we make this commitment. There's hundreds of thousands of Kenyan companies on there too. So if we can hold them to task to help us make this change, I think we can make it happen. It's $12 trillion. We just want 1%.
Just 1%.
Just one.
Kidogo tu. Just like any other business, scaling is important and it's tough.
Yeah.
But now your company is a bit interesting. It's a social enterprise as well.
Yeah.
And it comes with its own unique challenges.
Correct.
What are some of the biggest obstacles you faced and how did you get past them?
I'm still going through them, you know. I'm still going through them. I'll say the first one was the pivot from just digital to phygital was one that we realized was very important to make that shift to be able to bring more people on board. And then I will say the other is, you know, the red tape that is happening and bureaucracy. I think, or how I'm going about this is I'm going to the decision makers, the parents, right? Parents, I'm speaking to you. You guys make the decisions. You guys are the ones who pay for the school fees. You guys are the ones who say, this is a curriculum. This is what my child needs to learn. It's up to you to now hold yourself and your kids to task to how we make a change, right? So I believe that going to the parents and engaging them to what we're doing, demystifying gaming, demystifying the job opportunities, that it's opening up the doors. So that's one of the ways I've made a huge pivot as opposed to going to schools like we're doing in Atlanta. Here it's easier to go straight to the decision makers, the private schools, the directors, and then the parents at large. So we're still chipping away, you know. This next 3 years is a discovery phase, but we're making progress.
Okay, that's interesting. And now it shows that it's not just about the profits as a business. You need the people
Yeah.
who are the decision makers.
Yeah.
And you've also talked about SDGs and the climate work you also work on. But how do you ensure that BARBAH Games grows in a way that is responsible, both socially and environment?
Yeah. I mentioned our first partner is Captain Planet Foundation. They're coming up with 10 initiatives this year. And what we're doing is we also want to create a structure for the gaming in the country. What does that look like? We have 10 leagues. 10 leagues have 10 SDG buckets, right? Each bucket has a different SDG focus. What we're doing is we're going to schools and we activate gamers to, one, identify who they are and what their passions are, and then we align them to whatever SDG bucket speaks to their persona. And then from there, within the leagues, we now bracket them to different zones within the country, right? Take Mapshot and Kibir, for example. You know, Kibir has different zones, different, you know, ethnic groups. It's chopped up in different ways. But if we have teams representing the different zones, and then when they compete in these leagues, those teams who have community buy-in, right? When they win, locally, nationally, internationally, the community that bought into them also benefits, right? So then that way there's community development. Back to the SDGs. I had the opportunity to meet the Kenyan delegation when they came to Atlanta, and we spoke about the creative economy. And this is one of the initiatives that we wanted to focus on. They said that they were going to be building 1,464 ICT centers that we're yet to see. But how we also want to do that is like, as a team wins, that community can get access to ICT hubs for upskilling, because we know digital literacy is important. You know, as we go through this shift, 90% of Africans lack the 85% of digital skills needed for the future jobs. So digital literacy is a big one where these communities need who support their teams.
Oh, okay. There's a lot you've said.
I know.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I can't wait to see it actually being put into practice. You've said the next 3 years are the...
Next 3 years, we're finding the baseline, because we have
Yes.
a group of 3,000 schools in Atlanta who have all the computers, the internet access, everything they need. But we want to find the 3,000 schools here who we can compete with those there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 5 years after the 3 years, where do you see BARBAH Games?
In my mind's eye, 2029, so the next 3 years, we're finding a baseline, identifying the schools and the athletes who will compete with those on the other side. 2027 is when we really want to hit the ground running to do this SDG Cup tournaments, right? 2029 going into 2030, when the timeline is ending, because what happens after 2031? By that point, I want to believe that we will have inspired enough youth in East Africa to drive this conversation of the SDG Cup that we can take continental wide. So the next 5 years, I want to see East Africa having a firm grasp on the SDG Cup, because we are, as a community, the fourth largest GDP in the world. So if we can make that change, I think we will be in a good space to make a change for the continent.
Can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Can't wait. So now these questions are a bit quick fire, you know?
Okay.
Okay. So what are the 3 skills every young entrepreneur should develop?
I would say resiliency, innovation, and grit. I think those are things that needs to be developed. Absolutely.
This whole time we've been speaking, I've had some names that you've mentioned who have been very vital in your journey, whether you were in hospitality or even in the gaming space. So you can mention a mentor who's had a massive impact, a podcast, and a book.
So I would say a podcast, Steve Bartlett, Diary of a CEO. I also applied for his grant. I hope I get it.
Amen.
Amen. I would say Horst Schultz's book, Excellence Wins. And I would say a mentor, George McCarroll, who is the founder of Ted's Montana Grill.
Okay. What personal mantra do you have for everything that you're doing on your journey? So what's the mantra that you have guiding you?
It's one thing I say, Andrew, you're going to die, but make it matter before you die.
That was a bit bleak, but
I know. Listen, I have to ground myself every day.
yeah. Okay. So with everything that you've said, it's beautiful. You've given people a reason to see gaming in a different light, especially the decision makers. I'm looking at you, parents. Yes, if you could give one golden piece to them, because we know they're the most skeptical group of all. What golden piece would you give them?
Believe in your child. Believe in them. They have an innate drive for purpose that you might not see or connect with, but if you give them the space and mentor them, I think they will surprise you.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So that's all we have for today. BARBAH Games, you can't wait to see what you guys will do, especially by 2030. That's when your mark closes. Yeah. I've been your host, Ngina Mwaluko, and this is Youth Plus Radio Connect One-on-One.